The comma ray crackled with static for the third time in an hour, and James Chen knew something was fundamentally wrong. In his 15 years as a deep space communications officer aboard the research vessel Meridian, he'd never encountered interference patterns like these. The electromagnetic signatures were too regular, too purposeful to be natural phenomena. Control. This is Station 7. Are you receiving the anomalous transmissions on frequency 2.7 terahertz? James spoke into his headset, fingers dancing. Across the holographic interface that materialized before him, silence. James frowned. Adjusting his position in the ergonomic chair that had been his second home for the past 6 months. The Meridian was humanity's most advanced deep space research vessel, equipped with quantum communication arrays that could maintain real-time contact with Earth Command across distances that would have been impossible just a generation ago. The technology was supposed to be foolproof. Control, please respond. This is urgent. Still nothing. James felt the first cold tendrils of anxiety creep up his spine. He initiated a full diagnostic of the communication systems, his trained fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The readouts were all green, power levels nominal, quantum entanglement stable, transmission arrays functioning perfectly. Yet somehow, he couldn't reach anyone. The mysterious signal pulsed again, stronger this time. James isolated it, running it through every analysis protocol he knew. The pattern was definitely artificial, but unlike anything in humanity's databases. It carried harmonics that seemed to resonate with something deeper than mere electromagnetic radiation, as if the signal itself was somehow alive. Computer, initiate emergency protocol Omega-7. Lock down all external communications and prepare for the lights went out. Emergency illumination. Cast everything in hellish red shadows as James felt the subtle vibration of the ship's engines die. The Meridian was drifting, powerless, in the void between stars. His console flickered back to life, running on backup power, but the readings made no sense. According to the sensors, they were no longer alone. 3 massive objects had appeared around the ship, not approaching, but simply there, as if they'd stepped out of folded space itself. Each was roughly cylindrical, perhaps 2 kilometers long, constructed from materials that absorbed sensor sweeps rather than reflecting them. They were beautiful in their alien geometry, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living tissue. James reached for the general alarm, then stopped. His hand hovered over the control as a new thought occurred to him. If these were hostile aliens, why hadn't they simply destroyed the Meridian? Why shut down the power instead of vaporizing the ship outright? The answer came as a low, thrumming vibration that seemed to pass through the ship's hull and into his bones. It wasn't a sound exactly, but something deeper, a communication attempt that bypassed his ears entirely and spoke directly to his consciousness. Peace. It seemed to say curiosity. Question. James's training kicked in. First contact protocols demanded he alert the captain immediately. But with communications down and power failing, he was effectively the senior officer in this section. The weight of representing humanity in this moment settled on his shoulders like a lead blanket. He began typing rapidly, activating the ship's linguistic analysis programs and preparing a response. If these aliens were trying to communicate, then by God, he was going to communicate back. The vibration came again, more complex this time. James felt it in his teeth, in the marrow of his bones, but also somehow in his thoughts. The alien communication method was unlike anything in human experience, part telepathy, part quantum entanglement, part something else entirely. Question dash, seeking dash, knowledge dash, about dash, small dash ones dash, and dash metal dash shell. Translation software was struggling, producing fragmented interpretations that barely made sense. James realized that whatever these aliens were, they thought in ways that human language couldn't easily accommodate. He needed a different approach. Closing his eyes, James tried to respond in kind. He focused on the concept of greeting, not the word, but the feeling, the intention behind it. He thought of handshakes and smiles, of peaceful meetings and mutual respect. The response was immediate and overwhelming. A flood of alien consciousness brushed against his mind, curious and ancient beyond measure. In that brief contact, James glimpsed something of their nature, beings of pure thought who had long ago transcended the need for physical forms. traveling the galaxy in ships that were as much living creatures as vehicles. But there was something else in that contact, something that made James's blood run cold. These beings, the architects, as they called themselves, were dying, not individually, but as a species. They had achieved perfection of mind and technology, but in doing so, they had lost something essential. They no longer remembered how to feel wonder, how to experience the universe with fresh eyes. Long time seeking those who burn bright brief candle flame. James understood. The architects had been searching for species like humanity, young, chaotic, driven by passion rather than logic. They had found dozens of worlds, hundreds of civilizations, but none had possessed the particular quality they sought. What quality? James whispered aloud, not expecting an answer. The response came as a flood of images and sensations. He saw the architects' first attempts at contact with other species, patient, methodical, scientific. They had approached each new civilization with careful protocols, detailed cultural exchanges, and systematic knowledge transfer. Every encounter had been perfectly executed and utterly sterile. Then he saw humanity's response to their signals. The Meridian crew hadn't followed any protocol. When the alien transmissions had first begun, Dr. Martinez in the xenobiology lab had started playing music back at them, specifically a collection of Earth's most chaotic and emotional compositions. Lieutenant Park from engineering had transmitted mathematical proofs, but not the elegant ones the architects expected. Instead, he'd sent paradoxes and impossible equations that made no logical sense, but somehow felt right. Most surprisingly, 3 different crew members had transmitted what could only be described as jokes, linguistic constructs designed not to convey information, but to create a specific emotional response in the listener. The architects had never encountered anything like humor before. Chaos pattern joy making new thoughts birth. James felt himself grinning despite the situation. You're saying we surprised you? The mental equivalent of laughter filled his consciousness. Not the architect's laughter, but their attempt to understand the human concept. It was like watching a computer try to process poetry. Fascinating and slightly heartbreaking at the same time. Truth speaking small 1 long time no surprise coming to us double quotes. And now you want to understand how we do it? How we create surprise. The response was complex, layered with harmonics of meaning that James's human mind could barely process. The architects weren't just curious about humanity's chaotic nature, they were desperate for it. Their perfect civilization was stagnating, trapped in patterns of thought that had become increasingly rigid over millions of years. They needed chaos, needed the unpredictable spark that only younger species could provide. But there was a problem. James felt it in the alien consciousness like a cold wind. The architect's very presence was deadly to species like humanity. Their perfected minds were too powerful, too ordered. Extended contact would gradually impose their patterns of thought on human consciousness, slowly but inevitably transforming humanity into another version of themselves. Sorrow great harm bringing always to small bright ones. The images that followed were devastating. James saw world after world, civilization after civilization, as the architects made contact and slowly, inadvertently, destroyed everything that made each species unique. They had tried to prevent it, had developed elaborate protocols and safeguards, but their very nature made them a kind of mental virus that overrode creativity with perfection. Then why are you here? James asked, though he already suspected the answer. Last seeking before long sleep choosing. The architects were preparing to enter some kind of hibernation, to remove themselves from the galaxy before they could cause any more damage. But first, they wanted to understand. They wanted to experience, even secondhand, what it felt like to truly surprise and be surprised. James felt the weight of the moment. He was being asked to represent everything that made humanity special: creativity, chaos, the ability to find joy in the unexpected. But how could he demonstrate something like that under these circumstances? Then he remembered the emergency protocols he'd been about to activate. He thought about the careful, methodical response that his training demanded. He thought about the reports he would have to file, the diplomatic channels that would be followed, the endless bureaucracy that would inevitably follow first contact, and he decided to ignore all of it. "You want to understand human chaos?" James said aloud, his voice carrying through the ship's internal communication system. "Then let me show you something that would give our diplomats heart attacks." He activated the ship's internal PA system, patching his console directly into the communications array. If the architects wanted to understand humanity's chaotic nature, they were about to get a crash course. "Attention all crew, this is Communications Officer Chen. We are currently surrounded by 3 alien vessels, whose occupants are telepathically linked to me. They're dying of boredom and want to know what makes us special before they go into hibernation. I'm about to demonstrate. Please respond appropriately." The silence that followed was deafening. James could practically hear the disciplinary charges being filed in his future. But then, slowly the responses began. Dr. Martinez was first, her voice crackling through the speakers. "James, you beautiful idiot. Are you seriously conducting first contact over the PA system?" "That's exactly what I'm doing, Maria. What do you think of our new friends?" "I think they have terrible timing. I was just about to feed my bacterial cultures, and now I'm talking to telepathic aliens instead. This is going to completely throw off my experiment schedule." James felt a pulse of genuine confusion from the architects. The concept of being annoyed by poor timing during a species-defining moment was completely foreign to their ordered minds. Lieutenant Park's voice joined the conversation. "Chun, my grandmother always said that if you're going to do something stupid, at least do it with style. Are these aliens interested in seeing our propulsion systems? Because I've been working on some modifications that are definitely not regulation approved." "Park, you're not supposed to admit to unauthorized modifications over an open channel," came Captain Rodriguez's voice, stern but with an undertone of amusement. "James, when this is over, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about proper protocols." "Yes, Captain, but first, would you like to say hello to our guests?" "Hello, aliens. I'm Captain Isabel Rodriguez, and I'm responsible for this ship full of lunatics. I apologize in advance for whatever they're about to do." The mental laughter from the architects was stronger now, more genuine. They were beginning to understand something about human nature that their careful studies had missed. The way humor and chaos could coexist with competence and loyalty. Dr. Patel from the psychology department chimed in. "From a behavioral standpoint, this is fascinating. We're witnessing first contact being conducted like a coffee shop conversation. The aliens must be completely bewildered by our social dynamics." "Actually," James said, feeling the alien consciousness pressing against his mind, "I think they're starting to enjoy it. They're getting something they've never experienced before, a conversation that goes in directions they can't predict." "Speaking of unpredictable," came the voice of Chief Engineer Murphy, "I've got systems failing all over the ship, and according to my readouts, we're currently held in place by some kind of localized gravity field. Should I be concerned? Or is this all part of the cultural exchange?" James focused on the architects, asking the question without words. The response came as a feeling of reassurance, mixed with something that might have been embarrassment. "They're keeping us stable and safe," James reported. "I think they're apologetic about the power failures. They had to shut down our systems to prevent interference with their communication method." "Well, that's considerate of them," Murphy replied. "Most species would have just blown us up. Truth speaking, small one, many others fear first response violence." The architects were fascinated by the crew's casual acceptance of the situation. They had expected fear, panic, or at least formal diplomatic responses. Instead, they were witnessing something unprecedented, a species that could adapt to the impossible with humor and grace. "James," Dr. Martinez said, "ask them if they'd like to hear about my research. I'm studying extremophile bacteria that can survive in the vacuum of space. They're absolutely chaotic at the molecular level, but they create the most beautiful patterns when they reproduce. And I've got some musical compositions that might interest them," added Lieutenant Shaw from the Cultural Department. "They're based on mathematical principles, but they're designed to evoke specific emotional responses. The aliens might find the concept of non-logical art interesting." James felt the alien consciousness practically vibrating with curiosity. The architects were experiencing something they thought they had lost forever, the anticipation of learning something truly new. "They're interested," James confirmed. "But there's something else. A single quotes envious. They've achieved technological perfection, but they've lost the ability to create art or find joy in chaos. They're asking if there's a way to learn without becoming like them." The ship fell silent for a moment as the crew processed this information. Then Captain Rodriguez spoke, her voice thoughtful. "James, tell them that chaos isn't something you can learn from the outside. It has to come from within. It requires accepting that you might be wrong, that there might be better ways to do things, that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. Tell them," Dr. Patel added, "that perfection is the enemy of growth. If you've solved all the problems, you've stopped learning. If you've eliminated all the chaos, you've eliminated the possibility of surprise." James relayed these concepts, feeling the alien consciousness wrestle with ideas that challenged their fundamental worldview. The architects had spent millions of years trying to achieve perfect order, perfect knowledge, perfect control. The idea that such perfection might be a limitation rather than a goal was revolutionary. Question great importance. Path possible chaos learning not becoming small ones. The crew fell silent again, contemplating the magnitude of what the aliens were asking. They wanted to learn humanity's secret without becoming human themselves. They wanted to understand chaos without losing their essential nature. It was Dr. Martinez who finally spoke. "What if the answer isn't to become chaotic, but to remember how to play? Children learn through play because it's safe to make mistakes, safe to try impossible things. Maybe what you need isn't our chaos, but our willingness to experiment without fear of failure." The reaction from the architects was immediate and overwhelming. The concept of play, of purposeless experimentation driven by curiosity rather than necessity, was something they had forgotten existed. In their pursuit of perfection, they had eliminated the possibility of failure, and in doing so, they had eliminated the possibility of genuine discovery. Truth seen small one long time forgotten joy purposeless seeking. James felt something shift in the alien consciousness. The architects were beginning to understand that their problem wasn't a lack of chaos, it was a lack of wonder. They had become so focused on having all the answers that they had forgotten how to ask interesting questions. "There's something else," James said, the words coming to him as much from the alien consciousness as from his own thoughts. "They're realizing that they don't need to change their nature. They need to remember it. Before they became perfect, they were explorers. Too, they had wonder, curiosity, the ability to be surprised. They just forgot." The implications were staggering. If the architects could rediscover their capacity for wonder without losing their advanced knowledge, they wouldn't need to hibernate. They could continue exploring, continue learning, continue growing. But first, they needed to understand how to begin again. "You know what I think your problem is?" James said, feeling bolder as the alien consciousness became more familiar. "You've been approaching every situation like a research project. You analyze, categorize, and file everything away. But some things can't be understood through analysis alone." He paused, trying to find the right words to explain something that humans took for granted. When Dr. Martinez plays music to bacteria, she's not trying to prove a hypothesis. She's playing. When Lieutenant Park creates impossible equations, he's not solving a problem. He's wondering, what if? When we tell jokes, we're not trying to convey information. We're creating a shared moment of joy. The architect's response was complex, layered with harmonics of understanding and confusion. They could grasp the concepts intellectually, but the emotional reality remained elusive. Seeking understanding play definition safe failure joy. James felt an idea forming. "Would you like to try an experiment? Not a scientific one, but a A game? The alien consciousness paused, processing the concept. Game dash meaning dash play dash with dash rules dash, but dash no dash purpose? Exactly. The purpose is the playing itself. James turned to his console, activating the ship's recreational database. Computer, display the rules for the game called 20 Questions. The holographic display materialized, showing the simple rules of the ancient human game. One player thinks of an object, and the other player has 20 yes or no questions to guess what it is. The goal isn't to demonstrate knowledge or solve a critical problem. It's simply to have fun with the process of discovery. This is how human children learn to explore ideas, James explained to the architects. Not through systematic analysis, but through playful investigation. Would you like to try? The response came as a pulse of nervous excitement. The architects had never attempted anything without a clear purpose before. The concept of engaging in an activity purely for the joy of it was both terrifying and exhilarating. Acceptance nervousness joy seeking. Beginning small one thoughts object guessing. James grinned, thinking of something that would be challenging, but not impossible for a telepathic species to guess. Okay, I'm thinking of something. You have 20 questions. The first question came almost immediately. Object physical form having? Yes, it's a physical object. Object creation human hands by? Yes, it's made by humans. Object purpose survival necessity? No, it's not necessary for survival. James felt the alien consciousness pause, processing this information. The concept of humans creating objects that weren't necessary for survival was puzzling to them. Why would a species invest time and energy in non-essential items? Object bringing joy emotions positive? Yes, it brings joy. Object sound making music perhaps? No, it doesn't make music. Object visual beauty creating? Yes, it creates visual beauty. The questions continued, each one revealing more about how the architects thought. They approached the problem systematically, but James could feel their growing excitement as they began to understand the appeal of the guessing process. They were learning to enjoy the uncertainty, the gradual revelation of knowledge. Object colors multiple having? Yes, it has multiple colors. Object movement capability possessing? No, it doesn't move on its own. Object size human hand holding possible? Yes, you can hold it in your hand. James felt a surge of anticipation from the alien consciousness. They were getting close, and they were experiencing something they hadn't felt in millennia. The thrill of being on the verge of a discovery. Object plant derived materials containing? Yes, it contains plant derived materials. Object liquid containing vessel perhaps? No, it's not a container for liquids. Object words symbols displaying? Yes, it displays words and symbols. The excitement from the architects was palpable. No, they were piecing together the clues, feeling the satisfaction of gradual understanding. James could sense their growing appreciation for the process itself, separate from the eventual answer. Object knowledge stories containing perhaps? Yes, it contains stories and knowledge. Object pages paper multiple bound together? Yes, it's a book. The response from the architects was pure joy, not the cold satisfaction of solving a puzzle, but the warm pleasure of shared discovery. They had experienced something that their perfect minds had forgotten was possible. The fun of not knowing something and then finding out. Joy great understanding process beautiful uncertainty becoming knowledge. That's exactly right, James said, feeling tears in his eyes. The uncertainty is part of the beauty. If you knew everything from the beginning, there would be no journey to enjoy. The alien consciousness was practically vibrating with excitement. They were beginning to understand that their pursuit of perfect knowledge had robbed them of the joy of discovery. By eliminating all uncertainty, they had eliminated the possibility of surprise, wonder, and growth. Question great importance. Other games learning play methods existing? James laughed, feeling the infectious enthusiasm of the architects. Thousands of them. We have games that teach cooperation, games that encourage creativity, games that celebrate failure as part of learning. We have stories that are told differently each time. art that changes based on who's looking at it, music that's created spontaneously. He paused, struck by a sudden realization. You know what? You've been playing a game this whole time without realizing it. You've been exploring the galaxy, looking for something new and surprising. That's the ultimate game. The search for wonder. The architect's response was profound, carrying harmonics of recognition and transformation. They were beginning to understand that their long journey through the galaxy hadn't been a scientific mission or systematic survey. It had been play on a cosmic scale, a species-wide game of exploration and discovery. Truth seeing great understanding journey self game cosmic play. James felt the alien consciousness shifting, changing in fundamental ways. The architects were rediscovering parts of themselves they had thought were lost forever. They were remembering what it felt like to be curious rather than simply knowledgeable, to be explorers rather than just observers. There's something else, James said, the words coming from a deeper understanding that seemed to flow between him and the alien consciousness. Play isn't just about learning, it's about connection. When we play together, we create something that didn't exist before, a shared experience that changes both participants. The architect's response was immediate and overwhelming. They had been alone for so long, trapped in their perfect minds, that they had forgotten the possibility of true connection. Not just communication or information exchange, but the creation of something new through interaction. Seeking understanding connection creation shared experience new making. James felt an idea forming, something that seemed to come from both his human creativity and the alien consciousness simultaneously. What if we created something together? Not a solution to a problem, not an answer to a question, but something new just for the joy of creating it? The response was eager, almost desperate. The architects had been creators once, before they became perfect. They had built magnificent cities, composed vast symphonies of thought, painted with light itself. But they had lost the ability to create without purpose, to make something simply because it was beautiful. Agreement great enthusiasm creation shared joy seeking. James turned to his console, activating the ship's holographic projectors. Computer, create a collaborative art space. Allow external input through the communication array. The ship's central corridor was suddenly filled with swirling patterns of light and color. But these weren't random displays. They were the architects' thoughts made visible, their consciousness expressed as flowing geometric forms that pulsed with harmonics of meaning. Attention crew, James announced over the PA system. We're about to engage in humanity's first collaborative art project with an alien species. Please contribute whatever feels right to you. The response was immediate and chaotic. Dr. Martinez added bacterial growth patterns that twisted through the geometric forms like living vines. Lieutenant Park contributed mathematical equations that bloomed into fractal flowers. Captain Rodriguez added navigational charts that became abstract landscapes of possibility. The architects watched in fascination as the human contributions transformed their perfect geometric forms into something wild, unpredictable, and beautiful. Each addition changed the whole in ways that couldn't be predicted or controlled. The artwork was becoming something that neither species could have created. Alone. Wonder great beauty unpredictable creation shared joy making. James felt the alien consciousness changing, becoming more flexible, more open to possibility. The architects were rediscovering their capacity for wonder through direct experience. They were learning to play again, but there was still one more lesson to share. The collaborative artwork continued to evolve, growing more complex and beautiful with each passing minute. James watched as the architect's rigid geometric patterns softened and became more organic, influenced by the chaotic human contributions. Meanwhile, the human elements gained structure and harmony from the alien influence. It was a perfect metaphor for what was happening to the architects themselves. They weren't becoming human, but they were becoming something new, a synthesis of their perfect knowledge and humanity's creative chaos. Understanding great change self experiencing new becoming. That's the thing about play, James said, feeling a deep satisfaction as he watched the artwork evolve. It changes you. Every time you engage with something new, you become slightly different. You can't go back to exactly who you were before. The architect's response carried harmonics of wonder and slight apprehension. Change had been something they had tried to eliminate from their existence. The idea of willingly embracing transformation was both exhilarating and terrifying. Question importance. Change self safe identity maintaining possible? James considered this carefully. It was perhaps the most important question they had asked. The architects were afraid that rediscovering their capacity for play and wonder would somehow destroy their essential nature. Change is safe when it's chosen, he said finally. When you play, you're not losing who you are. You're discovering who you might become. The core of your identity doesn't disappear. It grows. He gestured to the artwork surrounding them. Look at what we've created together. Your geometric patterns are still there, but they're more beautiful now because they're combined with our chaos. Our creative energy is still there, but it's more structured because of your influence. We're all still ourselves, but we're more than we were before. The alien consciousness pulsed with understanding. The architects were beginning to realize that their fear of change had been what was truly destroying them. By trying to preserve their perfect state, they had become static, lifeless, unable to grow or evolve. Truth seeing fear change causing death slow stagnation. Double quotes. Exactly, James said. Death isn't the opposite of life. Stagnation is. Life is change, growth, adaptation. Play is how we practice being alive. The response from the architects was profound, carrying harmonics of recognition and transformation. They were beginning to understand that their long journey toward hibernation had been a journey toward death. Not physical death, but the death of everything that made existence meaningful. Understanding great hibernation path death slow choosing bin. James felt a surge of hope. But you don't have to choose that path. You can choose to play instead. You can choose to be curious again, to be surprised, to create things that have never existed before. The alien consciousness paused, processing this possibility. The architects were facing a choice that would determine the future of their species. They could continue on their planned path toward perfect static hibernation, or they could choose a chaos and uncertainty of continued existence. Choice great difficulty unknown path versus safe eternal. I know it's frightening, James said, feeling the weight of the moment, but that's what makes it alive. The unknown is where all the interesting things happen. It's where joy lives, where wonder grows, where new possibilities are born. He paused, then added something that came from the deepest part of his human understanding. Besides, you won't be alone. You've made friends today. We humans specialize in chaos and uncertainty. We could help you remember how to play. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The concept of friendship, of choosing to remain connected to another species, not for utility, but for joy, was something the architects had never experienced. They had studied other civilizations, learned from them, even protected them, but they had never simply enjoyed their company. Friendship meaning connection joy choosing mutual growth. Yes, James said, feeling tears on his cheeks. That's exactly what it means. We choose to stay connected because we make each other better. We play together because it's fun. We create together because what we make is more beautiful than what we could create alone. The artwork around them pulsed with renewed energy as the architect's consciousness fully embraced the concept. Their geometric patterns began to dance rather than simply flow, responding to the human contributions with something that could only be called joy. Decision great understanding hibernation path abandoning play choosing friendship accepting. James felt a surge of triumph and relief. The architects had chosen life over perfection, growth over stagnation, friendship over isolation. They would continue their journey through the galaxy, but now they would be explorers again, rather than researchers, players rather than observers. Ship's power systems suddenly hummed back to life as the architects released their technological control. But instead of simply restoring the original systems, they had made improvements, upgrades that would allow the Meridian to travel further, faster, and with greater safety than ever before. Gift friendship beginning journey shared possible making. Thank you, James said, feeling the alien consciousness beginning to withdraw from direct contact. But this isn't goodbye, is it? The response carried harmonics of promise and anticipation. The architects would continue their journey, but now they would visit civilizations not to study them, but to play with them. They would seek out chaos and uncertainty, embracing the unknown as a source of joy rather than a problem to be solved. Journey continuing play seeking friends making wonder rediscovering. James felt the alien ships beginning to move, their impossible geometries shifting as they prepared to fold space around themselves. But before they left, the architects shared one final gift, a brief glimpse of what they had seen in humanity. In that moment, James experienced the universe through alien eyes. He saw humanity not as a young, primitive species, but as something precious and rare, a civilization that had managed to maintain its sense of wonder despite its growing knowledge. He saw the beauty in human chaos, the strength in human adaptability, the miracle of human creativity. He saw that humanity's greatest gift wasn't its technology or its intelligence, but its ability to find joy in the unexpected, to create beauty from chaos, to choose growth over safety. Gratitude great teachers play wonder friendship gifts precious. And then they were gone, folded back into the impossible geometries of their ships, leaving behind only the memory of shared laughter and the promise of future meetings. James sat in his chair, surrounded by the slowly fading artwork they had created together, and activated his communications array. Earth Command needed to know about this encounter, but more importantly, they needed to understand what had really happened. Earth Command, this is Communications Officer James Chen aboard the Meridian. I'm transmitting a full report on our first contact with an alien species, but I want to start with the most important finding. We've just learned that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to play. He paused, looking at the beautiful patterns of light still dancing around the ship's corridors. We've made friends today, and they've reminded us that the universe is full of wonders we haven't even imagined yet. The real journey is just beginning. As James began his detailed report, he felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Humanity had passed its first test as a galactic species, not through superior technology or military might, but through something far more powerful, the ability to find joy in connection, to create beauty from chaos, and to choose wonder over certainty. The architects were out there somewhere, learning to play again. And somewhere else in the galaxy, other species were waiting to discover the same truth, that the universe was not a puzzle to be solved, but a playground to be explored. The greatest adventure was just beginning.